What's better than earning money from a 9-to-5 job? It's earning money while you sleep, which is made possible if you start investing. You're listening to the Real Estate Investing Demystified with your very own dynamic duo, Ava Benesocky and August Biniaz. Tune in as we discuss everything real estate, both on the passive and active sides. We feature life-changing stories of today's real estate leaders that will help build your own roadmap to success. This is a show that will lead you to a diversified portfolio, a much bigger revenue, and a next-level venture that brings you a smooth cash flow. Let's get this episode started. All right, it's another Thursday.
Another Thursday. Are you giving up our secrets of what day we record? But it is. Yes, it is a Thursday. Interesting times. We're wrapping things up because we're on our way to Florida. So
right.
We got to get this show done. We got a bunch of other things to do. I got some teeth cleaning to do today because, I'm in show business, right? Show business. I got to be perfect.
You got to be perfect.
But other than that, we're excited about our show. We have our good friend on the show, and we've got a chance to meet each other in person. A lot of times, a lot of our friends we don't get to meet in person, but today's guest we've met in person.
I fell in love with Keeley when I met her at the Think Multifamily Conference in Dallas. She just had like this amazing vibe, and I'm like, I want to be her friend.
Energy, absolutely energy. I was very excited to have met her as well, and I consider her a friend. So we'll get into that, but she's doing some exciting stuff. So we're going to talk about all of that great things and get the show started.
Just a little sneak peek. You can syndicate more than real estate.
You can syndicate anything.
You can syndicate anything.
And we're going to talk about what else you can syndicate.
All right, guys, here we go. So today we're joined by Keeley Hubbard. Now, Keeley is former VP of sales of an international organization. Keeley implemented her custom sales strategy to grow annual revenues from $40 million to over $220 million in less than 4 years. As a sales coach and business strategist, Keeley helps her clients confidently close deals and raise more capital through intentional, strategic, and authentic conversations that win. Now, Keeley also invests in large multifamily and Texas vineyards. So she is the managing partner of Hubbard Capital Group, where she's relentless and exceeding her investors' expectations. So we believe that this interview with Keeley will bring great value to women real estate investors looking to scale or start their own real estate private equity businesses.
Not only women, but
men
that's our main focus, but I'm sure men can take a lot of
golden nuggets from this.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Keeley.
Welcome,
Keeley.
Keeley.
For coming on.
I've been so looking forward to this. So thank you for having me. And it was so great to meet you all in person too. I really enjoyed that.
Right on. Let's just start off. Can you tell everybody about your background and then your start in real estate, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm one of those people that escaped corporate. I always say corporate America, but corporate exists everywhere, right? Corporate Canada, corporate America. But I escaped back in 2017. I was VP of sales for the company, like you'd mentioned before, and I just got tired of the corporate rat race. I was traveling 23 days a month. And the more that I climbed the corporate ladder, the further I got away from my passion, which was really working directly with my salespeople. So I left to start my own consulting business. Still run that today. It's a huge passion of mine. And I was in the financial education space when I was in corporate. So I've been having conversations with people about money for a very long time. And when I left and I had more time available from traveling, my dad was at the same time getting out of the financial markets. He was a professional trader, managed his own hedge fund for many years and Forex and futures. And he said, this isn't it anymore. Financial market can't get the returns for investors. We're going into real estate. Do you want to do it with me? Had no clue what he meant, but if anybody's met my dad, I was like, yeah, I'm in. I would go into business with him anytime. So that's really where we started. I was in multifamily and started in small multifamily, very quickly realized we cannot scale like this and we can't really serve the investors we want to help from that space. So we started getting into large multifamily, and now we are also involved in the agriculture space of building vineyards from the ground up here in Texas. So lots of things going on, but all exciting and very blessed.
Amazing. And I've actually met your dad in person as well. I think he was at the Dallas conference.
Yes.
And quite the team. So good for you guys. A lot to break down there. Why don't we start off with sales? Because sales is really the foundation of raising capital, in my opinion. So you're a sales coach, business owners, but Keeley, what do good sales look like that appeal to customers? So if you walk into a clothing store or car dealership, what would you consider a good mix of hands-on, soft sale, and also proactive, kind of take initiative guidance?
Or hands off.
Hands off. Yeah, hands off.
Yeah, most people hate salespeople. So it's just because everybody has such poor experiences with salespeople, no matter where you go. If you're in Neiman Marcus or you're buying a car or you're just walking through the mall. I don't know if y'all deal with that in Canada, but when you're in malls here in the US, it's like you got to stay away from the middle where all the kiosks are because they're trying to like grab your hair and straighten it, squirt lotion on your hands, slip bracelets on your hands. They're always trying to sell you something. We have such horrible experiences with salespeople that most consumers are so resistant to that process. And I think a lot of people, when they get into capital raising, they also resist it because they don't want to come across that way. And most clients that I've worked with have this misconception that they have to be somebody other than themselves when they're raising capital. I got to turn into this caricature version of who I am. I got to be outgoing and, shoot the breeze and get people to like me. And what's missing is the authenticity of, let's just have a conversation with this person. I don't know if I can help, but let's sit down and talk about it. And it's the real authentic conversations that's missing in any sales process. And that's what I teach, is that you can close a ton of business. You can raise millions of capital by just having authentic conversations with people. But it's getting people to take their walls down in the first place because they're so terrified of the sales process.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's break it down a bit more, I guess. We can get into a bit more, but go ahead, Ava.
Yeah. So Keeley, we kind of discussed your experience and background in sales and marketing, but let's talk about how was the transition from conventional sales and marketing to investor relations and raising capital for syndicated investments? Because was it different? Was it?
Yeah, it really wasn't, because when I was, and I've done a lot of different industries in my sales career, but where I really built my career in corporate and proved this out by teaching other people how I sell, which is what grew the company, it was in financial education. So talking to people about money is the most sensitive subject. And it's what most people hold their cards close to their vest. They don't share that information with anybody. So I had to get really good when I was in the corporate space of selling for myself, but then also teaching this to my sales teams of getting people's walls down so they're willing to open up and have a dialogue about something that's so personal for them. I think the one thing that's different in this space is it's a longer sales cycle. Depending on what you're selling in the corporate world, if you're B2B, I mean, you deal with enterprise sales that are 18 months of sales cycles. But in our space, one of the challenges is we get people excited about it early on, but you may not have a deal live right now. So we're trying to get them excited and hold them there and make sure that we've got that commitment, even if you don't have an opportunity for 2 months. So there are some nuances there. But it's learning people and it's learning how to get people to trust you quickly so they're willing to talk to you about their challenges financially.
And let's go over this a bit more, because I know we're spending some time on here, but I think it's very important. Obviously, investor relations and equity is a very important part of a real estate investment firm, or if you're syndicating deals, equity is a very important component. It's one of the main 3 pillars, right? It's the deal, it's executing the business plan, and it's having the equity, both debt and equity, to be able to fund the project. Mm-hmm. So let's walk through the journey. So marketing takes place. Now, marketing can be very broad. I would say that the show we're having right now is one of those marketing channels, but a marketing takes place. A potential investor realizes that we even exist. At some point, there's a call to action. There's a book call. There's a book conversation. There's some form of dialogue. And if we don't have a live deal like you just touched on, which most syndicators in most cases don't have a live deal at all times. Right now, we're just sitting on the sideline. We're not even looking to go into any deals while the Fed is still raising rates. So talk to us about that nurture process. Now, we have a robust nurture process internally here at CPI. We send out, we're trying not to overwhelm our investor database, because last thing we want is them pressing the unsubscribe button, but there is a level of a nurture. So we're creating so much great content. We're doing all the back end work of sourcing this information, creating the content, and putting into our investors' inbox. So then it really helps us with them seeing us as thought leaders, them seeing us as basically living, breathing this space, and then being always on top of their mind. Is that the recommended approach that you see in this kind of investor journey timeline, particularly in syndicated deals, where it's some form of email that they regularly receive? Talk to us about the process.
Yeah. And y'all do a fabulous job of nurturing your database. I look at it from 2 different tenets that you need to consider. So one is the modality of how are you actually getting that information to them? And the second one is, what is the messaging itself? And so, yes, emails are important, right? Email campaigns, but we have to recognize who's in our investor database. And if they're high net worth individuals, they're high performance professionals, they generally barely have time to read the emails that are coming in from their W-2 or their other business, let alone trying to filter through all the other personal emails that we get, right? From, I know, Ava, this Neiman Marcus emails and what's the sale going on? And oh, wait, here's a real estate investment. And people are just inundated with information. So I do love the idea of sending emails, but are there other ways that we can get in touch with our investors and keep them in the loop? So I'm a big fan of text marketing. It has a 97 to 98% deliverability rate. Not deliverability, my apologies, open rate. Open rate is more important. Open rate on email, industry average is 15 to 30%. It ranges. So you're getting straight to their phone, bypassing their email inbox. I love text marketing. So that's another one. The third one is I want to see my investors face to face. The more you see them face to face, the more trust that's there, the more that you really build a relationship. I'm not about an investor list. I want an investor community, and the community has culture, and it's really easy to build that when you're seeing them, you're seeing their face. So I love I hate the word webinar, but investor virtual meetups. So a lot of clients that I've worked with will put in place a virtual meetup for their community of investors. And it's a great place once a month, give it a catchy name and a fun title, and create a culture that people show up with their favorite glass of wine or a cocktail, and there's music, and they know when they come in, they're going to learn something about the real estate industry, how to make money, something about their 401k or their retirement accounts that they didn't know. We're always providing value, but we're seeing them face to face. So I love that idea, and it maximizes your time, right? It's a one-to-many communication type where people can show up and get to see your face, get plugged in, and you can talk about, here's why we don't have any opportunities right now. Here's what's going on in the market, and here's how our team is adjusting and managing that. The second tenet of marketing, I believe, is messaging. What are you actually saying to your investors? I think when we get into this space, we can get so consumed with how amazing our investments are, right? Whether it's new development, it's, agriculture, right? We're in vineyards, it's multifamily, that all of our communication to them is all about that. And it's like, well, where they're at, a lot of them mentally, is they're also still heavily invested in the stock market. And so we don't acknowledge what they're going through, what news they're hearing. I always check Yahoo Finance. I look at CNBC. When they're watching Wall Street Journal, when they're watching the news, they're reading articles. What are they hearing? Because we have to be in that frame of mind. What are the lies they're being fed by Wall Street? And how can we acknowledge where they're at and give them another perspective before we tell them how amazing our investments are? So messaging is just as important.
No, and you said it perfectly. I want to have an investor community, not an investor list. So
wow, yeah, I really like that. And let me ask you, on these on the once per month webinars, does everybody turn their camera on and they all talk to one another, and it's kind of like a networking?
We've seen that. I think you have to create that environment. One of them that we run, it's actually a closed to just investors that are within the vineyards, but we call it Through the Grapevine, and they know every time they log in, there's music, and it's usually 3 different songs that have to do with Texas or grapevines, and people hear this song on the radio and they text me, I heard this today and I thought about you. How are the vines doing? So we create this culture where there's music in the beginning. It's a fun environment. And it's like, hey, if it's your first time here, let us know in the chat, where are you from and what are you drinking? And we always cheers at the end of it. So I think if you create that environment, people want to have their camera on, and you're acknowledging people like, hey, Joe, it's great to see you. That looks like a really good cab. What are you drinking? So it makes people want to turn their camera on and interact because they're getting positive reinforcement from being engaged in the process.
Yes, human beings are tribal. So imagine having a tribe of all high net worth investors. It looks like a cell phone, which is filled with super high net worth.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Again, we were talking about how Keeley is energetic and fun to be around. So
yeah, awesome. Let's switch the conversation up a bit here.
Yeah, this is something I'm really excited to get your opinion on, actually, Keeley. In sales, of course, there are differences when marketing to women and men. So do you feel it's the same way when raising capital? For an example, for real estate deals, do women have a different psychology than men when investing capital?
So looking at it as the perspective as the woman is the investor or the woman raising capital?
Woman is an investor. We can talk about raising capital as well. We can do both ways. But this is a question that we were kind of talking about before the show. We're like, hey, this is super exciting because Ava was like, oh my God, I've never thought about this. So we love to dissect it as far as we can go. But yeah, as far as the marketing material, we know in conventional marketing, the way you market to women is different than the way you market to men. Like if you use the same marketing, you're going to, one or other is going to be totally lost. So now in capital raising, are you going to a similar type of pain point? Are you talking about the, crypto and the stock market, or are you talking about what passive income can buy for women? Like, how are you targeting your marketing and your approach and your investor relations women compared to men?
Yeah, I think so as an example, if you were speaking to a group of women, right? Like Ava, you're on stage and there's an audience of 200 women who are, high performance business owners. How you speak about investing is probably going to be a little bit different than if it were a room full of men. There's certain things you can get away with saying to women, acknowledging that a lot of them are the CFO of their household, right? Don't tell your husband that, but we understand that you're the one keeping an eye on the money and making those financial decisions. So let me simplify investments, because Wall Street tries to complicate it on purpose. I think a lot of men love the big words, the high powered, side of investing, where women are like, just quit with the acronyms and tell me what's really going on. Let's have a real conversation about it. So I've also realized in having conversations with clients, right, when I was selling financial education, 95%, if I had to guess a number, 95% of my clients were men. They came in, they wanted to learn how to trade stocks, futures, options, Forex. They wanted to get better at managing their own money. But I knew if I did not get the woman involved, there was no chance that he was going to actually enroll in the academy. And they were investing 15 to 75 grand in private education. But I knew that their wife, their spouse, their partner, significant other needed to be involved, because she would be upset or offended if he made the decision without including her. So I knew if I could get the spouse or the woman on board, they were good to go. So I was really aiming my conversations, talking to them. They were like, I'm excited about it. Well, let's, would it make sense to talk about this with your wife? Because I would have found out at that point, who they were married to. Would it make sense to talk about this with your wife? Not to try to sell her on it, but I found that most people at least want to, have their spouse on board with what it is that they're doing, so she can be supportive and y'all can be on the same page. And I always had some fun with it too. Some guys were like, oh, my wife doesn't even know I'm here. I've already lost 40 grand in my trading account. Don't tell her that. And my response is like, whoa, we got a problem, right? Like, I'm not going to be the reason that you're sleeping on the couch, or you're sleeping in the garage for a month because you made this decision without her. Why don't we bring her into the fold? Right. So it was really more about having the couple there, and they're both on the same page, and they're both involved in the investing decisions. It's the same when raising capital. Women get upset because they weren't involved in the decision. They feel hurt or offended by not even being asked. So I think it's important that you have both parties on board.
I like that. And when I'm having an investor call, sometimes both husband and wife will show up. But if not, the husband or wife will say, hey, I'm just vetting right now. I want to bring my husband or wife on after. So that I love what you did there. You try to bring them together.
Yeah, sometimes the wife is hiding in the background listening. Who the heck is this woman my husband is trying to send money to? And
right.
That's why I say, Ava, don't be too giggly on the calls, and be
very,
stern.
It's true. It's very true. When I was selling financial education, I was doing workshops, and again, 95% are men. And at the time I was 24 years old. I'm quite a bit older than that now, but I was 24 years old. And so when the spouse would come in because they wanted to evaluate the academy, my goal is to not be a distraction. I'm sitting next to the wife. I'm getting rid of barriers that are in between us, whether it's a desk, but I'm sitting next to the wife. I'm not sitting next to the husband with the wife across from us at the table trying to sell her or convince her. It's like, I don't want her to think that I'm some 24-year-old woman trying to get her husband to spend a bunch of money. And that is something you have to be aware of as a woman in this space. We can still be feminine and we can be all the amazing things that we are, but don't be a distraction. And I really get on a soapbox when women lead with that as an advantage and sell from that perspective. That bothers me. I would rather be recognized as, admired for my skill set and my knowledge and how I help people versus, oh my gosh, she's, really attractive to look at. So the women, I think, ruin it for people like us, Ava, that lead with that. It's just like, you're so much more than how you look.
Absolutely.
So I try to tone that down and not be a distraction.
Well said, Keeley. Well said. Moving on to the next question here. I'm curious, what metrics do you focus on your marketing spend? So what sort of feedback do you prefer on assessing whether your messaging is resonating? What is your take on advertising, SEOs, videos, social media, etc.? I want to get all the goods here. And then how should we go about targeting potential audience and converting them to paying customers or investors?
I think with anything, whether you're spending money or you're not, and I'm not investing in ad spend right now, our growth of our investor database has been organic and been referrals, simply because we're not raising 50 million this year for the vineyards. We're just getting each individual project going, and we're able to supply that just from our own network of people. But with any clients that I've worked with that have, done ad spend, they're focused on SEO, SEO is a whole nother animal in and of itself. So my recommendation there is to hire a professional that really understands SEO and can put out content. Where I feel like what's missing in messaging and marketing, whether it's in email, it's in blog posts, it's in videos, you're spending dollars to drive views to this type of messaging, is there's no emotional content there. And what I mean by that is it's always, here's how, look at how amazing, apartment investing is. But what people don't realize, what drives people to make a decision to change and to do something different is a pain point. And we skip over that completely. So we have to bring that back into our messaging. And it could be as simple as, I know you're probably sitting here looking at your retirement accounts, wondering how you lost 6 figures this past year. You may have been on the stock market roller coaster now for over a decade, and you want to do something different, but you're so overwhelmed with everything else in your business, you just don't know where to turn. If you feel like that, I get it. We felt the exact same way a couple of years ago, and that's why we started looking into alternative investments. Before we get into like, hey, look at the returns, look at the tax advantages, it's acknowledging where they're at and speaking to their heart. That's what gets people to make a change. And that has to come into all of your content. It's why AI is amazing, but when you're using AI to write articles, you have to go back through and you've got to loop that emotional content in, because that's what drives people to say, okay, you know what? You're right. I have lost a lot of money. I'm tired of feeling this way. I am stressed about my finances. I need to do something different. People will stick with the devil they know, right? They may have lost a lot of money in the stock market, but if we don't get them to a place where they acknowledge, yes, this is important enough and painful enough to fix it, they're not going to make a change.
I love that you're saying that. Remember when I came to you the other day and I'm like, we got to start following what's happening outside of real estate and try to relay that when we're...
Yes.
Exactly what she's saying. She just kind of put it all into perspective, but I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, you wanted to connect on an emotional level. I just cared about the IRR.
Listen, feminine versus masculine energy, right?
There you go.
It's a great example of it.
All right, Keeley. So...
let's switch the conversation, really switch it up. Again, really about that woman-men dynamic in the business and workplace. But go ahead, Ava.
All right. So after a good half a century after the women's rights movement in the 1960s, there's still a gender wage gap. So Keeley, what's your take on affirmative action approaches to giving women a leg up? For an example, such as Finland's quota of 40% of corporate board seats must be taken by women for companies with more than 250 employees, as opposed to more bootstrapping approaches that remove restrictions to enabling women entrepreneurs and hiring on more women. So isn't there a better way to speed up gender equality in your opinion? And any thoughts on the proposed Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA?
I may have an oppositional perspective on this. So, I even have had a woman get upset with me about this in the past. This is an interesting story. So when I was in corporate, I was the only female executive on the team. And I was also the youngest. The second oldest was 15 to 16 years older than I was. Oh, wow. So I was dealing with, many executives. Youngest was, 42, 43. And then CEOs, COO, CMO, they're all, in their 60s. And for me, yes, there were some things that happened where I was called dear and, things that are just inappropriate in the workplace. But I believe what earned my seat at the table was me believing that I deserved to sit there in the first place. And I think a lot of women play small. And we perpetuate this idea that we're less than with a lot of these movements. Yes, I believe women deserve a seat at the table. But if we don't believe that first internally, nobody else is going to do it for us. And it's in how you show up every day in your skill set and how you present yourself and the lines that you draw in the sand of how you're willing to be treated. There was a time in a meeting, my former CEO, where he just, went off. Something went wrong. It wasn't my fault, but I'm the one that he chose to, yell at in a meeting full of a lot of people that reported into me that were directors, other VPs, other executives in the meeting. And so for me, it's like, if I don't believe that I deserve a seat at the table and I deserve to be treated the exact same way as any other man in the room, I'm not going to step up and stand up for myself. So when the meeting took a break, I made sure people heard it. I said, I need to speak to you outside. And so he came outside and I said, you're not allowed to ever talk to me like that again. And I drew the line in the sand in a respectful manner, but everything changed from that point forward because you teach people how to treat you. So when, initiatives happen in the company for, the lean in movement and Keeley, do you want to head this up? My response was no. And I didn't want to head it up. So you're the only female executive on the board. Do you want to head this up? And I said, no, because it's going to perpetuate the idea that women don't deserve to be at this level. I would rather lead by example. So I know I have a different perspective on it, but a lot of this, women don't show up at the level they should because they don't believe they deserve a seat at the table. So I think we have to do the inner work first.
So it's the merit approach rather than any type of quotas or forced restrictions or kind of
Yeah. Instead of waiting for, organizational changes and rules and regulations to come down, demand it for yourself first. Walk your butt into the CEO's office and sit down and say, I deserve this.
Yes.
I deserve the pay grade. I deserve, right? But we have to advocate for ourselves instead of waiting for somebody else to do it for us.
Yes. Or other plan is just Ava walked in with a gun. I
That
had
works
no
too.
choice. I was under duress, and that's how she became the CEO, and that's how I work for her.
I love it.
That's right. All right. I'm just loving Keeley more and more as she talks.
Oh,
Loving her more and more. She's just such an incredible woman. All right. So let's I'm really excited to learn more about the vineyards. I want to learn, how did you get into this field? And it's really agricultural. You are an agricultural investor that syndicates vineyards. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And how did you get into it?
Give us a crash course. Talk to us about
please.
everything. I mean, you were talking about tax advantages that certain real estate and syndications have. Is there? And we know that, for example, we were interviewing a friend of ours who does, I believe, oil and gas, and there's huge tax benefits there. So give us a crash course on vineyards. Obviously sounds very fun and elegant, but tell us about the money. Tell us about, a crash course on this asset class.
And do people get free wine?
yeah, of course, right? Of course. So I'll give you a quick kind of how we got into it. We actually had the partner of ours called us. It was my phone number. It was on the website at the time. And I picked up the phone. He's like, hey, you don't know who I am, but I got to talk to your dad. Can I talk to him? Can I have his phone number? And I was like, sure. He's really adamant. Call my dad. I'm like, hey, I just gave some guy your phone number. I don't know what he wants, but he's going to be calling you. And it was our partner. And he heard my dad on another podcast where my dad was talking about, what do you do in your spare time? Talked about the ranch, right? We have a family ranch. It's close to 300 acres. Going to run cattle on it. Got to put, 30 acres of vineyards on there to help make the land payment. And so that came up in conversation. And our partner heard this. He also knew my dad had run 6 companies. He knew my sales and marketing background. And so he put the connection together. They're the agriculture side. They're the vineyard operators. They're experts in that. They've never raised capital. They've never syndicated. They don't even know, where to start. So that's why they partnered with us, was, can you bring that aspect to the business and help us create a brand and build a legacy in Texas? So that's where we started. Vineyard is a very elegant name, but the reality is we're grape farmers, right? That's what we're doing. We are growing wine grapes. We are crushing the juice, selling it to the wineries. And that's the only part of the supply chain that we are focused on the syndication space, because that's where the majority of the money's made. It's fun. It's sexy to make wine, but that's not where the money's made here. So we don't care if we were doing trash dumps. If it makes a lot of money, we'll do it and our investors will follow, but we just happen to be in a fun space of vineyards. So Texas vineyards. Texas has a $13.1 billion wine industry here. Most people don't know that because it's all consumed in state. So nearly all of it is consumed in state, but we don't have enough grapes to meet the demand that continues to grow. We are only currently producing 50% of the wine grapes that we need to meet the demand. So where are the extra grapes coming from? Well, anybody could guess that it's coming from California to make the wines based on what Texans are wanting to purchase. And if you've ever met an obnoxious Texan, and if you haven't, maybe I'll be the first one. We don't like that. We like Texas to be Texas. We want Texas wine to be Texas grapes. And so our partners have their own 350-acre vineyard that they operate themselves. And they were tired of seeing, why does California juice keep coming into Texas? And they realized there was this massive supply gap. And so that was their goal. We're going to fill the supply gap. We're going to bring production up to meet, existing wine demand and the growing wine demand. And it's all going to be Texas grapes, which wineries really love and appreciate. But that's kind of the business plan. And we're doing it different than most Texas vineyards out there. They're mom and pop. A vineyard of, for example, of our partners' 350-acre personal vineyard, they run it with 3 guys, big tractors, machines. It's how California runs their vineyards. Every other vineyard farmer in Texas is hand labor. You would need close to 100 people during harvest, during pruning to do things by hand. We do it with large tractors. Why are Texas farmers not doing that already and transitioning over from a technology perspective? It's really expensive and they can't afford the equipment. One of our tractors comes from France and it's over $500,000 just for that one piece of equipment. So how do you scale it? Well, you do syndication, right? You get economies of scale. We go in there, we operate like California. We really close the gap on the wine grape supply and make our wineries really happy at the same time, especially the big operators that have been waiting for a player like this to come on the scene. So we're really excited about it, kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we jumped on it.
And are you syndicating more of an M&A type of style where you're syndicating the business itself, or are your investors are you buying the dirt? Are you buying land?
We're doing it all. So we're buying the land. Investors are invested in the business itself, but the business owns the land. So we buy, a 400-acre block of land like we've just purchased. We start doing land prep. We order the vines. We order all the steel. 240,000 T-posts of steel get delivered. So we have about 600 acres of vines going in the ground this coming spring, and they're in it for 25 years. And if we decide to replant, we have contingency funds for that as well. So it's an investment that cash flows for decades. I think that's why a lot of investors are attracted to it.
Got it. And I'm sure we are familiar with Champagne, and you can't call anything Champagne unless it comes from the Champagne region of France. Is the area, the geography in Texas that you're focusing on, does it have any potential to become, the Champagne region of Texas? Is it something special about the dirt or about the elevation or about water sources?
Well, not Champagne because it's too hot here. So the climate of the grapes that we grow is very similar to Central California. And so we do a lot of reds, and reds sell for quite a bit more than whites. So that's why we like them too. It helps us hit our pro forma for our investors. But Texas land is so inexpensive. We're getting acreage below $3,000 an acre, where similar land in California with same water sources would be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 an acre. So we can buy land for pretty inexpensive here. We're able to, to operate the vineyard at pretty low costs, right? Our labor tends to be less here as well. We sit on top of an aquifer that's been here for over a century, so we're not concerned about water sources like California is dealing with. And we don't have the humidity that a lot of other regions have, which require more spraying of fungicides. We've got a really kind of hot, dry climate, which is perfect for certain varietals that we grow. But, Texas's land is cheap. That's a big reason for it. I'd say probably that's the biggest reason for it is the inexpensiveness of land.
That's awesome. Can you guys give us like a quick overview of what's the risk return profile?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the downside of this, I'd say the downside, even though we have investors that are like, we don't care, we're in, is that you have to wait for returns. It does not cash flow out of the gate. Vineyards are not annual crops. You plant them once and they last 25 years. So it takes time for us to train the vines up and build a really strong wood stock before investors see a return. So their first return comes in at year 4. But after year 4, when we hit full harvest in year 5, returns are over 30%. So we always say the juice is worth the squeeze. It's worth the wait to get those returns. It is, we give it a 10-year return model, but it cash flows longer than that. But over 10 years, the returns are about 210 to 275%, depending on our production and the wine varietals. And then after that, it cash flows 16% a year for the life of the vineyard. If we decide to replant, we replant. We have contingency funds, and it'll keep cash flowing 16% a year. So a lot of investors are looking at it like a legacy play. They're thinking about their kids, their grandkids. The risk in a vineyard, we actually are really excited about because our operation is so big. We have crop insurance, which I wish in multifamily we could get occupancy insurance. We can't, but in this space, we have multi-peril crop insurance that we're paying anywhere between $600,000 to $800,000 a year in premiums to make sure that if something happens, our income is covered. And we'll be reimbursed 75% of our projected harvest. So we can distribute checks to our investors. And then we repair the vineyard and we plan for harvest the following year. So crop insurance is something that's really unique in this space.
Got it. You guys started out with multifamily. Are you still investing in multifamily? And if yes, what is your allocation into vineyards to multifamily right now currently?
We are not. We're divesting out of multifamily right now. So we're selling one of our properties. I'm just going to be blunt with you. My dad is tired of asset management, of some of the deals we've done. We've done some heavy lifts, and I'm sure y'all know, being involved in the day-to-day with those heavy lifts and the big value adds, it's a lot of work. And so my dad has always wanted to be more invested in land. So we are in vineyards. We're looking at timber projects, and we're exploring some other land opportunities. It's not that we won't go back into multifamily. I think we're going to wait to see, just in this market, it makes more sense for our attention to be focused in the agriculture space to get this vineyard operation, of multiple vineyard blocks up and running and build the infrastructure before we distract ourselves with other shiny objects.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. Got it. And where is it? Like, you're located where?
I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. So Dallas, Fort Worth.
Dallas. And wineries where are they located?
They are kind of northwest Texas. If you've ever heard of Lubbock, it's about 45 minutes outside of Lubbock. It's called the High Plains AVA, which stands for American Viticultural Area. Okay. You would never end up there unless you're driving through Texas, headed to another state, maybe.
Got it.
There's a lot of cotton farmers out there. I think it's more than 30% of the US's cotton is grown out there. It's just flat land, no trees. not pretty, but it's a great climate for growing grapes.
Got it. Got it. And how far is it from Dallas?
From where I'm at, it's about a 4.5 to 5 hour drive.
Okay. Okay. So it's a driving distance to get to visit possibly.
Keeley, what would be like your elevator pitch to an investor that's looking to possibly invest in these, syndicated vineyards?
Well, they wouldn't even know about it. But if what would be if you're in a room of investors, what would be your elevator pitch when it comes to
or just like talking to somebody? I'm just curious, like on high, like really quick, that quick,
Yeah, what I usually tell them, because this is what I found with investors is, we have investors that are in multifamily, they're in the stock market, diversification is important in their portfolio. And one of the challenges for a lot of investors in multifamily is their money flips sooner than they expected. Thought they were in a 5 to 6 year turn, they're getting their money out quite a bit sooner, and then they don't know where to put it. So we're often hearing, where can I put my money long term where it's going to generate passive income? And that's really what we've designed within the agriculture space, specifically with Texas vineyards. So I always come from the angle of passive income where you're not flipping your money constantly and having to put it somewhere. It's going to cash flow long term. And I always give the caveat, with that being said, you're not going to expect returns right out of the gate. And I think the more that I emphasize that, the more investors want to be a part of it. I always lead with the negatives of why it's not the right fit for every investor, and they want to know more.
Perceived negatives, I guess. And you were guessing she was going to include the free wine.
Yeah, we're going to private label wine for sure. Our partner has their own crush facility and they have a winemaker, and we're looking at building out more crush facilities and getting involved in kind of that next step of the supply chain. Nice. So we might get into bottling, probably just private label for our investors, not on the
investors, right?
That'd be
kind of a cool little, to incentivize them. Hey, by the way, every year you get a couple bottles of this beautiful wine.
Keeley, we could talk to you all day about all this great talks, but
I feel the same way.
Let's get to the next segment. Do you have any other questions, Ava?
I think I'm good. I'll be probably calling you up. And
we really appreciate your wisdom, and we really appreciate you giving us all these golden nuggets and information about the business you're in and investor relations and vineyards. And let's get to the next segment of our show.
All right, the
10 championship rounds to financial freedom.
So whatever comes top of mind, I'm going to start asking you questions, and really looking forward to hearing what you got to say. So the first question, who was the most influential person in your life?
My dad. Without a doubt in my mind. Everybody always thinks it's, a celebrity or, a historical figure, but it's been my father. And the reason for that, he's a Marine, and it's just his persistence and his mindset. And I always remember a quote that he says, he's like, if you can't run anymore, walk. If you can't walk anymore, crawl. Even if you're on your belly, whatever it takes, just keep moving forward. And I've seen, him go through so many things in his life, and he never lets it get him down. And he's just, he's such an inspiration to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right, Keeley. Next question. What is the number one book you'd recommend?
There's so many. One that I really love is called The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. And it's so good because obviously we're involved in money in our business. We're talking to investors about money, and we don't understand or even think about some of the constructs that we have in our mind about how we view money. And so I think it's breaking through some of those belief systems. But this book showed me how much we're just a vessel. Money is just a tool, and we're simply the vessel. And so the more money that we have, the more money can flow through us to be a vessel for good and do more good in this world. And so it's such an incredible book. That, and I know I probably shouldn't give you a second one, but The Untethered Soul is another great one.
What is it?
The Untethered Soul.
We're writing it down. All right, next question. If you had the opportunity to travel back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that question. My advice would be to bring joy back into the process. I mean, I'm just now learning that this past year from a business coach, I'm such an intense personality. You may not see that, but I'm a driver. When I was in the corporate space, it was this hustle culture. You got to do more, to be more, to get more, and you just exhaust yourself, and you kind of get to a place where it's like emotionally bankrupt. Like, why am I doing this if it's not fun? What's the point? And I think that in business, we lose sight of having joy in the process. My nickname as a child was Twinkle. It is Twinkle. My grandma still calls me that, but she said it's because I was always had this joy in my spirit. You could feel it when I walked in the room. And I realized, like, man, what kind of energy am I bringing into a room? I got to get back to who I was as a child and not let business and all the to-dos and all the things and responsibilities that we have just suck the joy out of the process. Because that's what life is supposed to be. Why don't we enjoy this crazy wild ride that we're on?
Have fun while you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question. What's the best investment you've ever made?
It's the vineyards. I know it sounds like it's a canned pitch, but for us, it's the vineyards. And even though, the payout and the returns for us are coming with the investors in years 4 or 5, this for me has been a lifetime opportunity. and completely changing the financial trajectory of my life.
Tremendous.
Amazing. Now, what's the worst investment you've ever made, and what lessons did you learn from it?
And a business partner. Partnerships, as y'all know, this are so important. My dad and I laugh. We're like, we're only ever going to go into business with family from now on. And I know people are like, oh, family, that sounds risky, but our family is so tight knit. When I left corporate, I got into a partnership that completely leveled me financially. And, it was something I poured my heart and soul into. It was going to be a game changer for everybody involved. And it was just felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath me overnight and completely leveled me. And so, I was left feeling, was I cut out for this? Should I have not left corporate? Like, should I be in business? And I'm so glad that I went through that, because looking back, there were so many lessons learned. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through those hardships. But who you do business with is, I think, more important than what the actual product is itself. Who are the people?
Great advice.
Yeah, great advice. All right. How much would you need in the bank to retire today? What's your number?
Also, the problem is that, the whole, like, your lifestyle keeps growing. I mean, I love nice things. I think that's why I was so drawn to y'all. I think we can appreciate the champagne lifestyle, right? The luxury. I think for me, the number to where I would feel like complete, just exhale, probably 10 million. But I wouldn't stop working, because I even realized like 10 million is not that much, right? To have 10 million in the bank, it's like, well, that's a good cushion, but I would still I'd continue working. So I think for me to just sit back and say I'm set, it'd probably be closer to 30.
Yeah, right on. All right. Next question. If you could have dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be?
Teddy Roosevelt or Winston Churchill. And a lot of my brand, and something that's been a big influence in my life, is the man in the arena speech. I mean, it's everything with like who I am today. And that primary question that drives my actions every day is, are you sitting in the stands? Or are you standing in the arena? And I think that it just gets me fired up. It anchors me, and it reminds me of, living and building a big life. But I would love to talk to both of them, and especially Winston Churchill, and understand his frame of mind with all the things that he went through during that time.
All right. Okay. Next question. If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing now?
That's hard. That's so hard. Well, if I was completely financially independent, I would be giving away my sales coaching. Like if I was worth 30, 40 million, I would be getting on as many stages as I could and helping business owners break through to the next level. There's no way I can live and not do sales coaching. I really feel like it's a gift that God gave me. And I would love to get to a place where I'm investing my time and doing it for free to help business owners, better their life.
Amazing.
All right, Keeley, book smarts or street smarts?
Street. Before you finish it, street smarts. And, I have a college education. I have a bachelor's degree. I thought about going back to get my MBA, and I'm not knocking the system. I have a lot of friends that have several degrees, have doctorates, and I learned so much more with just real life lessons learned. And I'd much rather have street smarts than anything that the educational system could give me.
All set.
Okay, last question. If you had $1 million cash and you had to make one investment today, what would it be?
That's such a good question. The one that I'm thinking about, I'm under an NDA and I can't tell you. But that's what I'd pour my money into. And it's in the tech space. Tech startups are risky, but I would throw it all in there.
All right. That's a wrap.
Nice. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that is a wrap.
Just before you go, let everybody know what's the best way that they can reach you.
Oh, find me on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Just shoot me a message. I love to talk to people. You're probably going to get a voice message back, or maybe even a video. I love to meet people through social media.
Right on.
Keeley is spelled Keeley for the ones of us that don't know how to spell.
It's a lot of E's, there's a lot of E's in there.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it again. And we should do this again at some soon time, telling us about, next steps and what you've been up to. So hope to see you again.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thank y'all so much. It's been a joy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope this conversation enlightened you on how to win big in this highly profitable and risk-averse space. Get on your feet and embrace this world that offers so many opportunities just waiting for you out there. Continue your journey to becoming a savvy real estate expert by subscribing to the show at cpicapital.ca. Don't forget to leave a positive rating and share with your friends. See you on the next one.